Have you ever heard of Code 7? It means when the officers are going to get a meal. Well, that's not what we're doing here today. This is Crime Watch. Hello and welcome to Crime Watch. I'm Jane Cameron with Sergeant Chris Nunez of the Buena Park Police Department. You know, it's a beautiful day and we just left a scene where there were some homeless people hanging out at the park. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
Well, for our viewers who recognize the park, they know where we're at. It happens to be one of the popular gathering places for a lot of folks who are homeless and tend to stay in this particular area. And there were just a few people there this morning. Some, the more or less, given the day, sometimes there can be quite a few, and once in a while there's just one or two.
So today there was a report of somebody who was walking around saying weird stuff.
Yeah, this was actually a call, a passerby anonymously called in because this guy was walking around speaking to people, but he clearly wasn't making any sense, and this person thought that maybe he might need help because just seemed kind of out of it, I guess.
But this is actually someone that the police officers are familiar with.
Yeah, when I got here and spoke with the other officers, apparently this man is homeless himself. And known by a lot of officers that patrol in this area. So the sergeant was telling me that we get calls on this guy because he will wander around the neighborhood and occasionally go onto private property or even go into people's backyards and things like that. So I guess he hasn't really done anything violent or particularly criminal, other than the trespass. But because he is strange, is how he's often described, we get calls on him regularly.
What about the other transients that were here? I noticed that there were several that were in the picnic area. Are they able to hang out at the park like they were doing?
Actually they are able to hang out at the park. They're using the park just like anybody else would use the park. Most of those folks we know. We have a lot of regular contact with homeless population, and we have this agreements. The city has certain ordinances, camping ordinances that would prohibit them from camping, even though you saw they had their stuff with them and so on. So as long as they're not pitching tents and cooking food, where they are actually camping, then their presence in the park alone is not illegal.
What about at night?
Well, that's interesting in that technically, according to ordinance, all the city parks close overnight. So then just being here would be illegal. But the police have this delicate balance of kind of keeping tabs or keeping track on this population of homeless people, and sometimes if they are in the park at night, it's better from a law enforcement perspective to kind of know who's there and where they're at, versus other options. So there are times when we do have to have them move on out of the park, and it just kind of depends on the circumstances. But otherwise, it would be an exercise in discretion to allow them to remain in the park after closing. And
Don't the sprinklers come on at night?
well, that's a good point. Yeah, so a lot of times they'll leave on their own, but under these overhangs, typically the sprinklers don't get that area wet. So they'll it's kind of interesting. They know the sections of the park that won't get wet. And a lot of times they'll kind of congregate adjacent to the buildings and that sort of thing to lay out their bedding and have a dry spot that's kind of out of public view to spend the night.
If they're not here, where are they?
Well, that's the point. If they're not here, then we really don't know where they are. And not all homeless people are out committing crimes, but it kind of runs the gamut. There are a population of homeless people that will steal, that will shoplift, that will commit burglaries, vehicle burglaries, and so on. So, if they're here kind of bedded down for the night, then, the officers that are out working that graveyard shift know that. And sometimes that's the lesser of two evils. So it's kind of a delicate balance. And this problem is not exclusive to Buena Park. I have colleagues throughout the county that deal with this very issue. Not far from here in Fullerton, the National Guard Armory is open during the winter months. So a lot of times, people or the homeless population who are inclined to travel up there, it's not that far from here, but to travel there, get in line, and there's certain restrictions. But if they manage to get there early enough, they can sleep indoors overnight, and a lot of them choose to do that.
Homeless, even though there may be a few more because of the economy and some of the hardships, it seems like there's always been homeless people anywhere.
There has always been homeless. I think the problem, or I'll say this, the circumstance regarding homeless people seems to be a bigger issue today than in the past, and that there are a whole variety of reasons why that might be. But occasionally we run into people that choose to live this way. There's always those who are just plain down and out, and are going through tough times, who otherwise are average folks. People with mental illness, people with drug issues, alcohol issues, and it kind of runs the gamut. So the population that always seemed to interest me were those few individuals that just chose to live this way. Even if they had, some of them have resources, they have family, they could easily get off the street if they chose to, but this is how they want to live. So they just add themselves to the growing population of people who are there for all these other reasons.
sergeant always mentions how important it is for the neighborhood to be aware of what's going on, unusual activity, people, cars. This was a perfect example of why everybody needs to be that way.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. You know, we happened to be close by after I went to Starbucks. I noticed the call was pending. It was around the corner. So the whole basis for the call was a car that was occupied by a young female was not recognized by anybody that lived in that immediate area, and so I guess she was parked there for a while, long enough to make the nearby residents concerned because they didn't recognize the car.
And so they called, and you happened to be first on scene.
Yeah, I don't like doing that because then I might have to do something.
We're not considered backup, the cameraman and I.
So yeah, since we were so close, we happened to be the first ones there, and as it turns out, the young lady was actually staying just around the corner with some family, and she told me she didn't want to text while she was driving, so she pulled over and she was just sitting in her car because she wanted a little bit of a quiet time, away from the people she was staying with.
Now, what's interesting is what she said about the neighborhood when you contacted her.
Yeah, that was a funny point. She wasn't upset in any way with me, although she did appear to be kind of struggling. She was a little upset, and that's the reason why she went off by herself. But she kind of complained to me that she thought, is this neighborhood always so nosy and so picky, And I asked, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, I was just sitting here and pulled over, just wanted to stop and collect my thoughts, and I didn't want to be on my phone while I was driving. And she says, I've been staying here about 3 weeks, and I didn't think I was causing any problems, So, I relate to her, well, you're not causing any problems, but the people nearby here didn't recognize your car, so they called us to check.
And that goes back to what you've said, is that the police department doesn't mind if someone in a neighborhood calls because they see something unusual so that it can be checked out. What a great opportunity for that neighborhood to know that maybe potentially the word's gotten around and they're a little bit safer.
Yes, and unless you make the call and give us an opportunity to check, we'll never know. So in this case, it was no big deal. She was a nice young woman. Everything was in order. She had a license. Her car was registered. There were really no issues, and it was nothing more than me having a little conversation with her and making sure she herself was fine.
So we just talked about being proactive in your neighborhood and watching things that may seem unusual. And who knows, in this type of a situation, maybe a passerby saw this business being broken into.
Well, I can tell you from working patrol in the field, sometimes it's hard to tell. And in this particular burglary, the suspects actually removed an entire pane of glass out of the door. And if you break the glass, sometimes that's easier to see. But in this case, when we got out and I walked up on the front of the business, I saw the glass off to the side, but I didn't immediately notice that it had been removed from the door. So you would think you would notice, but sometimes it's harder to tell.
Officer Lee, why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened here?
Pretty much the workers closed the business last night about 12 o'clock, and they didn't have any alarm for the business, so they didn't know this happened during the nighttime. And this morning, when the workers came in to open the business, they realized the glass of the front door was removed. It was removed to the side. So they made an entry, they did a walkthrough to the restaurant, and they noticed the safe was open, one of the safe was actually taken, and along with a couple of iPads, which is used for business.
You'll see that there's the CSI unit behind, and it looks like she's dusting for anything she can find.
Yes, usually glasses, because glasses are easier to trap fingerprints, the oils and stuff. More especially because they are very diligent about cleaning the glasses, and the worker told me they recently cleaned the glasses, so more than likely if the suspect wearing gloves, they might have left their fingerprints on it, and since it was clean glass, it will be easier to eliminate any other fingerprints.
So obviously there's a lot of employees around here. Nobody, whether it's a business or a residence, likes to have property stolen. It's such a violation. Is there anything else that maybe will help in the investigation?
As you can see, there's lots of surveillance cameras throughout the complex, so we're going to definitely review it. And they also have a surveillance video inside of the restaurant, so we're going to review that as well. So any type of recording device is excellent. It's a great tool for the investigation.
This doesn't happen too often where they take the whole pane of glass out, is it?
No, it's pretty rare MO or method. It's the first I've seen in quite a while. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it was as easy as it looks. So hopefully this is not the beginning of a new trend.
So now the property owner, the business owners, what do they have to do? They'll be able to go back into business soon enough, right?
Oh, sure. A glass company can replace the pane, get the door fixed. The walkthrough that we did, it didn't appear that there's very much damage inside. So they'll be up and running today for business. But certainly there'll be some investigation once Officer Lee finishes his report and the CSI report. Then it's up to detectives to take that and run with it and see what we can develop in terms of finding leads to investigate and ultimately identify suspects.
And who knows, maybe somebody will come forward and say that they saw something unusual during the early morning hours.
Yeah, that would be nice. The complex does close down late at night, and even though some of these restaurants do stay open late, as Officer Lee mentioned, it was about midnight employees left here. So more than likely that helps us narrow, the time frame as to when the crime occurred. So it sounds as though it was over, during the early morning hours, past midnight, but before opening this morning. So that helps narrow the time frame. So we'll see. Luckily, there's not a lot of damage there, and as Officer Lee mentioned, once investigators are able to view the video, then who knows? Maybe I know who the suspects are just based on the video, or at least provide leads to get them identified.
If you have any questions about today's show, you can call the Buena Park Police Department at 562-3901. With Sergeant Chris Nunez and Officer Lee, I'm Jane Cameron. Thanks for watching.
sure to like us on the official City of Buena Park Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. There you'll find a little of everything from information about our city services and upcoming events to discounts offered by our entertainment attractions such as Knott's Berry Farm, Medieval Times, and Pirates Dinner Adventure.